World War II veteran for his service in the United States Army. We don't get to do many World War II veterans. So I just want to ask all these people, where were they in 1944? Maybe they weren't even on this earth yet. Probably not a twinkle in their daddy's eye. But we so appreciate the fact that we could be here today to honor him. And thank you all for coming, all of his family. We are from an organization called Quilts of Valor. My name's Beverly. This is Barbara and Karen. We are part of a national foundation that was started in 2003 by a lady named Catherine Roberts when her son was deployed to Iraq. When she kept having bad dreams about her son, and he was just in discomfort, and he kept struggling with his demons of war. She kept having dreams about that. And one night, when she dreamed about him, he was sitting on a cot and he was wrapped in a quilt, and his whole demeanor had changed to one of hope and peace. So Catherine thought, I can make a quilt. So she made her first quilt and she took it to Walter Reed Hospital in 2004 and gave it to an Iraq veteran there. To date, the Quilts of Valor Foundation has given 300,677 quilts to veterans throughout the nation. There's millions out there still, but our little group in Coweta County was started in 2014, and today we're giving away our quilt number 737. 737, it's like an airplane.
That is unbelievable.
If you know of any veterans who haven't received a quilt, we would love to be able to honor them for their service. But I want to tell you about the quilt. I hope it brings a three-part message to you. First of all, we want to honor you for your many sacrifices. We honor you for protecting us from the effects of war. We will never know all that you have sacrificed for us, but we honor your service to these United States. Second, we want to thank you for your service. For all you've endured on our behalf, we say thank you. We thank you that we're free to be here today to give you this quilt. We thank you that we're able to go to church tomorrow to worship wherever we desire. We thank you for our children and grandchildren that they can go to schools of their choice. Without you, none of these things would be possible. We know that the cost of freedom is never free, and the cost of our freedom is the dedication of men and women such as yourself. Finally, we hope this quilt will offer you comfort. Throughout history, when young men went off to war, they often took a quilt made by family members. It may have been all they had to provide them warmth and comfort and memories of their loved ones. We think that quilts still have the ability to offer a source of comfort and warmth. We want you to use this quilt. We don't want you to put it in a closet or on the shelf. When you take it home, you put it in your favorite chair. Sure. You put it on your favorite chair, on your bed, on your sofa, wherever. And we hope that you'll wrap yourself in it when you're feeling down, and it will bring you comfort and love. Or when you're feeling cold, you can use it too. Yeah. So every quilt tells a story, and the story of your quilt began with a Georgia quilter who shares your love of country. The top of the quilt, with its many colors, shapes, and fabrics, represents the communities and the many individuals that we are. The batting is the center of the quilt, and that gives it the warmth. And it represents our hope that this quilt will bring comfort, peace, and healing to the person who receives it. The backing of the quilt is its strength, and that represents you. It represents your strength and the support of your family and our community and our nation. And each stitch holds the layers together and represents love, gratitude, and sometimes even tears of the maker. So on behalf of the Quilts of Valor Foundation, with our deepest appreciation, we thank you for your service to our country. Thank you, and know that you are forever in our hearts.
Your quilt was made, which means it was pieced and bound by Miss Karen Daniels.
Oh.
And then the outside stitching, which is called the quilting or the long arming, was done by one of our long armors, and her name is Jean Raines. So we have Nesbert Bud Eller, United States Army, 1944-1948. Mr. Eller took training at Camp Fannin in Tyler, Texas, and from there he went to Fort Meade, Maryland. When his whole unit was assigned to go to Europe, while at Fort Meade, orders were changed when things became more desperate in the Pacific, and he was sent to South Alabama for advanced beach and jungle training. From there he went to Fort San Luis Obispo in California for beach landing training. He was transferred to General MacArthur's headquarters in Leyte, Philippines, where he was for the next 14 months. The size of the military on the island was eventually reduced, and at that time, Mr. Eller became involved with returning ammunition, tanks, etc. back to the U.S. As an alternative to the return, items were moved to the middle of the bay and sunk or covered up on the island. Leyte is still considered a military site today, and while there he was the administrative assistant to the base ordnance commander. Mr. Eller received the following medals: Sharpshooter Medal and Headquarters Commendation for Outstanding Service. And just a little aside, Mr. Eller played guitar whenever he could in the military, even on board from California to Leyte. He was hauled out to play in front of the 1,500 to 2,000 troops, and he remembers the mic sliding back and forth while on the rolling seas. He dubbed it a nightmare.
Now, here we are.
Here we are.
What a beautiful job.
Yeah.
I can give you a background on a quilt.
Uh-oh.
But that is a beautiful thing, and all the work.
Here's our label that
Karen
shows it,
Daniels, Jean Raines, and Karen Daniels.
and Bud Eller.
That's who got it.
And my well, here you are, get the picture About 10, we lived on the farm in a large old log home. And one of the things that happened when I was at that age was that the women in the community, and in fact, my mother, my grandmother, and my aunt that lived nearby, 3 of them, and 3 other ladies in the community, about November, would come to our house. And in the living room, we had for a living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 1 door, 1 window, and a door in the kitchen, and a potbelly stove to warm by. At the ceiling was a quilting frame. And about November, after they got the garden laid by and the canning done and the sweet potatoes dug and put in the cellar under the house, the ladies gathered to make a quilt. And the folks would come in and let the frame down, and they brought the chairs out of the kitchen, and there was usually 6, 2 on each side and 1 on each end. And each of them brought to that scraps that they had saved the last year, since last winter, from clothes that they made for their family. They usually quite often made their underwear, they made their shirts, they made their pants, and they'd take the scraps. Each one collected scraps, and then they'd bring them all when they came to the quilt. And they'd let that down and sit there, and they started piecing the scraps together first. You put the scraps together, little pieces, and there wasn't any particular plan or way. You just tried to make them fit the best way you would, and cut them again if you had to. Well, I sit there and did my schoolwork or read a book, probably a Wild West book. I love Zane Grey and all those Western stories. Nevertheless, I would sit there, but by the same token, the only place in the house that was warm was the living room. And it was with a pot-belly stove with a pipe up here and run out through the chimney that no longer was used. They would sit there and they talked about everything from chickens to pigs to the lady's illness and whatever it was. I got the community news while I read all these women talking about everything during a cold, cold day while the women stitch. One little stitch, what do? 1/32 or something at a time? It is a tremendous undertaking. Well, I witnessed that, and then it would take them the better part of 3 months to do a quilt. And some of them couldn't come every time, and some could. But they took the better part of that to do a quilt. So usually they would finish with the quilt along about February or March, that they started in November. And every night, they pull the string and raise the frame up and then let her down. So I was there. I have an appreciation for what is involved to make a quilt, because I was there and watched it happen. We were near Eller. I was brought up. I graduated from high school at Eller, Georgia. I had gotten into somewhere later on, about 12, I got my first guitar. I don't know how in the world they afforded it. It's a Sears Roebuck silver tone guitar. I taught myself how to play the guitar. The guitar is laying on the sofa in the den at my house right now.
Do you still play?
And he is going to be responsible for cleaning it up. When you went into the military at Fort McPherson, Georgia, I received from the Gideon organization a New Testament, and my serial number is 4847. I got this in January 1945. It was placed there by the Gideon organization. I have been a Gideon for 25 or 30 years or more. Gideons are, I don't know, 75 years old or something.